Hello, I'm Michael Coliani, Public Affairs and Media Relations Director for your Arizona Game and Fish Department. And today on Arizona Wildlife Views, technology abounds when it comes to bird call apps, but we'll introduce you to an Arizona expert making the case for learning to bird by ear and why that's important. Plus, did you know that Arizona Game and Fish adopts out hundreds of captive desert tortoises surrendered to the department? A look at why you might consider one to be your next pet. And later, the story of how some OHV enthusiasts made water for wildlife possible north of Quartzsite. We've got these stories and so much more. Arizona Wildlife Views starts right now.
Arizona Wildlife Views is brought to you by the sale of hunting and fishing licenses and the Heritage Fund, lottery dollars working for wildlife. Some projects made possible by the Sport Fish and Wildlife Restoration Fund.
Birders flock to Arizona from across the world in search of different bird species. In fact, Arizona is host to several bird festivals across the state throughout the year. Take a look.
One of the best things about being a birder in Arizona is that you can go birding all over the state in winter, spring, summer, and fall. Plus, you don't have to go birding all alone. Arizona is home to several birding and wildlife festivals year-round, where you can see and learn about some of the most beautiful winged wonders up close. In Phoenix, you can head to the annual Arizona Game and Fish Expo event every March. There you can see owls, eagles, and hawks, and a lot of other fascinating wildlife species. In February in the West Valley in Avondale, there is the Tres Rios Nature Festival at the Estrella Mountain Regional Park. There you can seek out Audubon experts who are always on hand to provide guided tours and local bird watching opportunities along the wetlands there. In April, head to Cottonwood. There you will find the Verde Valley Birding and Nature Festival. At that time is the peak spring migration season at Dead Horse Ranch State Park on the banks of the Verde River. It's also in close proximity to the Oak Creek, Sycamore Creek, and other perennial waters, offering a wide selection of guided tours, hikes, and workshops in one of Arizona's richest birding habitats. In July in Sedona, there is the annual International Hummingbird Society's Hummingbird Festival, a celebration in the Red Rocks that includes vendors of all things hummingbird, seminars on different hummingbird species, and even hummingbird garden tours. Like in Sedona, in eastern Arizona in July, they also celebrate nature's tiny wonder. The Arizona Game and Fish Department hosts the annual High Country Hummingbird Festival at the Sipe Wildlife Area near Springerville and Eager. With over 230 identified species of birds, southern Arizona is and always has been prime birding country, and that means lots of southern Arizona birding festivals for beginners and for those who know what species they are looking for. Wings Over Wilcox is a winter birding and nature festival that takes place in the town of Wilcox and features thousands of sandhill cranes that spend the winter there. There are all kinds of birding festivals all around our state. Make sure to get online and find out your next location for fun and birds.
Still ahead on Arizona Wildlife Views, A look at how some OHV riding groups worked with the department to bring water to wildlife. But first, birding by ear. It might be a little bit more difficult than using an app on your phone, but can be a lot more rewarding.
Hear that? That's birding by ear. Birding by ear is basically just kind of identifying birds without even seeing them.
Homer Hansen is an environmental scientist with a passion for sharing every aspect of Arizona birdwatching with others.
What we're going to start off with is a pretty simple exercise. We're just going to try and be as quiet as we can for a minute or so. Birding by ear really is an opportunity to be out in nature and kind of be present in the moment. Really, you're all of a sudden, like in the background, we can hear the kingfisher flying by, and it's like, wow, that's interesting, and maybe some of the ducks or coots, and it's all of a sudden you're taken away from the phone. Perhaps all of a sudden you're thinking, and I think that's the beauty of birding by ear. It allows our mind to kind of relax and open up and not be distracted by all the modern technologies. Because this is a low-pitched warbler.
Homer says when you get down to it, learning birdsong is like learning a foreign language. Practically every bird speaks their own.
And it's like any language, with humans, we might talk about, okay, how do we structure our verbs, for example, And it's the same idea with bird sounds. How do we structure the types of sounds they're making? Because there are a variety of different sounds. I think one of the realities with humans, we're primates. And so we are very visual, extremely visual. We have excellent color vision, much better than most mammals that's out there. And of course we can hear quite well. But we're really a visual creature, and so when we hear birds, to actually start recognizing them by their different sounds is a little bit more challenging. Now, there are people who are naturally really good. There's musical people out there, for example, who are just by default much better at hearing the sounds and seeing those sounds perhaps in their brain. But for some of the rest of us out there, like myself, it takes a little more practice and effort to try and learn, remember, and recognize those bird sounds. So that's one of the ideas with the workshops that I give, is to help give some guidance and direction on how to start, and then also how to take advantage of some of the technology today. Because that really what they're doing with today's technology is taking bird sound and converting it into visual spectrograms, sonographs, and so forth.
Homer says one of the first things you can do to get better at identifying birds from their bird song is to just learn to be still.
I think the first step is just sitting around someplace where there could be birdsong, which hopefully can be your backyard. And many places, in many residential areas, there can be a fair number of birds and other, wildlife around that you can listen to. And just taking that time to sit around and listen and just start recognizing differences. That's a good starting point, because a lot of times we just go through life and we push off to the side a lot of those sounds, because all that stuff can be distracting in a sense. But if you can take the time just to sit and start discerning the different sounds, that's a good thing just to practice. Recognition of differences, because that's a lot of what appreciation of the bird songs are, is hearing the differences between the different species and even within their own songs. But if you're going to try the non-technological way, go to an area where you're hearing the birds, but you can also see them too. And that's a really, really good way to start recognizing bird songs. It's one way that I hear people talk about to some students and participants in my workshops, and you can read about the idea. If I see the bird at the same time I'm hearing it, it helps me recognize the bird and the song. And so that's a really, I think, a really powerful tool, just to find the bird. If you hear a bird singing, you want to know what it is, run down the sound and see what it is. It's a great way to reinforce your learning there.
Homer says you can go birding almost anywhere. More tips include going out when the birds are most active vocally in the early morning. Make a list of bird calls you already know. Go birding with someone really good at identifying birdsong. Lots of places offer free birding tours with experienced guides. And don't be afraid to use your phone apps and technology to help you identify different bird songs.
One of the key things is just being in the moment. Doesn't matter which one, whatever sort of activity you're doing. And if you're out in nature and you're in the moment, by default, everything that we consider healthy happens. Our blood pressure drops, our heart rate drops, we become more relaxed. And again, it happens with meditation or prayer too. These are all the same practices. And that's one of the beauties of nature, is just being able to be out in the moment there. It's very, very blissful. Now just a little bit.
We're at Scott's Leadwell in Unit 43A, redeveloping a wildlife water that was an old cattle water that failed. And we brought in some temporary tanks and trough. Now we're putting in a buried PVC pipe system, which will have capacity about 11,000 gallons when we're done. Drought has been a major issue, and it's definitely been a challenge to keep water out on the landscape for wildlife.
We feel very strongly that water is important for wildlife, particularly in this lower desert. Mule deer, hawks, birds of all sorts, just an incredible number of species. And we're willing to give our time and effort into building something that'll last a long time and provide, benefits for long after we're gone.
When we have to continuously haul to unreliable water sources, it's a huge strain. So the bigger systems that we can get buried and working and functioning alleviates some of that stress throughout the region on everyone.
All right. Scott's Leadwell, just north of Quartzsite, is a historical site in that it used to be part of a working cattle ranch and grazing allotment here on the BLM land. We turned to the OHV community because we know how much they enjoy seeing the wildlife just as much as the sportsmen that are actively out here. And through them, we received donations and then also information that led us to apply for a grant through Yamaha Outdoor Initiative.
This is a regularly used travel trail, and it's on our travel management plan here. It made sense for the OHV community to be involved in establishing this, because one of the reasons we ride in the desert is to see wildlife.
The Arizona Peace Trail Incorporated, the Baus Ghost Riders ATV Club, and the Arizona Sunriders OHV Club are the main large groups locally. Each group donated $1,000 and their time and letters of support, and they've been really interested in the whole process and seeing it come to fruition.
The key to success is basically our volunteers, in particular the individuals that operate our equipment. They're highly skilled. This is what they do 5 days a week in their normal job, and they come out and donate their time, and they make this job simple and safe.
Something that's real special about this project is the inclusion of the off-highway vehicle groups, and to have them work alongside a group like the Yuma Valley Rod and Gun Club to interact with each other and realize that they kind of share a common interest, keeping wildlife on the landscape out here.
Wanted. Good homes for tortoises.
I think it'd be the perfect pet for anybody, whether you are a pet person or not a pet person.
Due primarily to illegal breeding, the Arizona Game and Fish Department is in dire need of Arizonans willing to step up to give these unique desert reptiles forever homes.
We have close to 300 tortoises. I believe the last number we had when we calculated was 288. They are all in brumation right now. The only one that isn't is Glacian here. They are gonna wake up probably at the end of March, beginning of March, sometime in March. They're gonna wake up and we really have nowhere to put them once they are awake. Because right now they're brumating, so we don't need so much space, but once they're up, we're gonna need lots of space and lots of area for them. We don't have that here.
Desert tortoises are protected in Arizona and can't be legally collected from the wild. But breeding of captive tortoises and the return of tortoises by owners who can no longer care for them has led to a large surplus of these native reptiles at our wildlife center.
We really have nowhere to put more than half of these tortoises once they wake up. So we're trying to have as many approved applications as we can before spring so we can get them out of here as soon as possible.
I heard through some friends that Arizona Game and Fish had some who needed homes. I thought, we can do that.
Trudy Thompson of Phoenix first adopted her tortoise a couple of years ago.
So I inquired about it and got quite a bit of information and learned how to make a safe habitat, and some friends helped us dig and set fence posts and put the fencing around so the tortoise couldn't dig out and so the dogs couldn't get to it. And then we drove out to the Game and Fish headquarters north of Phoenix, and here we are.
I would say the biggest thing that people kind of misunderstand is that they don't have personalities, and they totally do. Everyone is different, and we want to try to get you one that's going to match your home and match your own personality as well.
Tex is really social. Like right now, he is right next to me and he comes and checks me out when he hears me. Of course, it doesn't hurt that I'm bringing him strawberries, his favorite treat. But I'd say check it out. There's a lot of information online about them, about how to take care of them, and the people at the agency are really generous with their time and information, and they're experts, and they care a lot about these animals.
"2024 was a big year for a tiny mammal that lives only in southern Arizona. The Pinaleno Mountains near Safford, Arizona are home to a rare subspecies of red squirrel that exists nowhere else in the world. Meet the Mount Graham Red Squirrel. It was listed as endangered in 1987, and biologists have been closely monitoring its population ever since.
So this squirrel's probably looking at us.
Arizona Game and Fish biologist Tim Snow has helped conduct the annual squirrel census for about 20 years.
There he is. It's right behind us.
Census takers don't actually count squirrels, they inventory their middens.
And so this is where they're caching their cones. They dig holes in the scale pile, and then they bury cones as deep as that hole is.
This is a typical red squirrel midden. It's a pile of spruce, fir, and pine cone scales that builds up over time as squirrels feast on cone seeds and discard the scales.
So they go to the midden year after year after year. This is his territory, his or her territory. The squirrel comes here, it feeds here, gathers cones, brings it back here. The midden acts as a refrigerator, keeps the cones closed until the squirrel comes back to feed on it. They clip all the way down to the core and make a real clean, what we call a cone cob.
Fresh signs of feeding indicate an active midden, and that counts as one squirrel.
If we come to a midden and we don't see cone cobs, we don't see fresh scale, we don't see cached cones, then that gets marked as not active, and we don't count that as a squirrel.
For a decade or so, the Mount Graham Red Squirrel population hovered in the range of 200 to 300 animals.
Until the last big fire, which was the Fry Fire in 2017, and our numbers plummeted down to 35 animals.
I was panicking, actually. the idea that there were only 35 of this species left, this subspecies, on the mountain, we all were extremely concerned that we might actually see it wink out over the winter. One of the short-term projects that we developed just to get them through the winter was a supplemental feeding program.
Luckily, after the first year after the fire, then the numbers rebounded to 75 squirrels.
In 2019, the growth stalled at only 78 individuals, and concerns continued to rise.
If we were to have another large fire, high intensity, high severity come through, I mean, there's every chance that we could see this subspecies wiped out. We're very concerned about that, and we're working hard with our partners on different recovery aspects to try to ensure that that doesn't happen.
The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is collaborating with the Coronado National Forest, Arizona Game and Fish, the Phoenix Zoo, and the University of Arizona on strategies to save the squirrel.
So this is an area we just finished working on.
The Forest Service, through its Pinaleno Ecosystem Restoration Project, has been thinning trees to make the landscape more resilient to wildfire.
We don't want to lose any more of the squirrel's habitat, so we're trying to remove those fuels, protect the trees that we have.
As you can see, we've done some thinning to open up the canopy. We've left these limbs here as erosion protection. These will eventually degrade and it will look, hopefully, like we've never been working in here. And we do have a squirrel right up in this area. He was here while we were doing the work. He tends to spend a lot of time here. He likes these logs as sort of a runway for him and a shelter. And so we were very careful when we were working in this area not to get too close to it, to leave him structures that he was going to be using. Typically we stay more than at 200 feet or further away from any known squirrel.
With permission from Fish and Wildlife, they removed fuel hazards inside that 200-foot buffer to make this a safer place for the squirrel to live.
And hope that, in the future years that it will, mean that fire can be here more naturally, and we can also have squirrels at the same time.
The Forest Service is also collecting cones to grow new trees, and it's using pheromone packets to protect existing trees from insects.
It basically is telling other insects, this hotel is full, don't move in here.
At the Phoenix Zoo, the Arizona Center for Nature Conservation has been trying to crack the code on how to breed Mount Graham red squirrels in captivity. While the zoo works on that puzzle, Arizona Game and Fish is removing non-native Abert squirrels that compete for food and habitat. The University of Arizona is conducting research to better understand the Mount Graham red squirrel and what can be done to help it. And the Fish and Wildlife Service is also using LiDAR imagery to search for new habitat suitable for the squirrels. All of the work seems to be paying off, because in 2024 the number of Mount Graham red squirrels was much higher than expected. At least 233 squirrels were living on the mountain in 2024. That's a massive leap from 144 the previous year. And it's good news for the future of this endangered species.
And I think that, given the habitat management that we're doing, we're on the right track.
What we have to do is to continue to monitor, try to do the little things that can help them along the way, and hopefully the squirrels remain on this mountain forever.
If you're enjoying the show, please visit our website, www.azgfd.gov. That's going to do it for this edition of our show. But until next time, get out there and enjoy those Arizona wildlife views.
To subscribe to Arizona Wildlife Views magazine, which includes the Arizona Wildlife Views calendar, visit www.azgfd.gov/magazine.